Hi, everybody. We have a duo here right now, and I'm very, very honored to have both of you join us for this session. Okay, so you guys are in Georgia, and we're talking to Yvette and Frank, and they are the sort of the muscle and the intellectual energy, pretty much. Maybe I'm doing the dishonor to somebody, but TFSX is your platform for futures education and I guess renewal in a sense, and you're challenging a lot of the basic assumptions that futurists have been tarred with, I would say. It's not necessarily what we do as futurists, but certainly you're really good at saying, hang on a second, guys. What about? What about? Have you thought of this? Oh, I love that. So I'm going to start with Yvette and say, Yvette, as I've said to you before we started recording, I've been following you as long as I've been following Frank, in a sense, because TFSX has been on my radar for a long time. How did you get into futures, and what is it that puts the fire in your belly?
Oh, thank you so much. It's a great question. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all today. Um, I have I think everybody's path to foresight is a little bit unique, right? There's not one path. But I was a finance professional originally in my first sort of career, and I was working at the Walt Disney Company. And I had been there close to 13 years. I had supported all different functions within the organization. I had done budgets and all types of planning, strategic planning for all the different functions, the theme parks, HR, you name it. And then I was tapped to begin to found and lead a new division that was going to be focused on the future of work.
Mm.
And my initial response was to decline it
Run
because
away.
I didn't have any kind of credentialing in HR, and I felt like I'm not sure what this whole division focused on the future is going to be about. But I considered it a little bit longer, and then I decided to take the leap, and that's where I discovered foresight. I was in the job about 3 days when
Hmm.
it was time for the World Future Society conference, and my boss was going to go, but once she hired me, she sent me, and that was my entry
Yes.
into the field, which,
Okay.
it could have gone one of two ways, honestly. I could have easily run away screaming after that conference, but instead I doubled down. I established the department, and then a year later, went back to the World Future Society conference. I debated going back, although I had made
Hmm.
some great connections. I was a little bit frustrated at the time because I was trying to establish a team at Disney and really develop a culture of future thinkers. But I felt that the folks I was working with in the field were more interested in bespoke trainings or going off and creating scenarios on my behalf. And I knew that's not what I wanted. I was new in the field, but I knew that's not what I wanted. I wanted to build capacity. So I decided to go back one more time to the World Future Society conference in hopes that I would meet somebody or make a connection or find something new. It was also because it was in Vancouver, Canada. And so that was another big reason why I went, and it was a free trip.
Yeah.
And that's where I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Frank Spencer. He jumped into my airport van, and the rest, as they say, is
It's
history, or in
history.
our case, the future. Yeah. So for me, when I discovered foresight, it was quite interesting because I had been doing 5-year plans and strategic plans my whole career. And
Mm.
I felt almost as if, where has this been all my life? I was almost a little annoyed that I hadn't known about this field.
Yeah.
I knew when I was building plans at an organizational level and for Disney and for the other companies I worked for, that there had to be a better way
Yeah.
because we were just sort of looking at the past and extrapolating it in Excel
Yeah.
spreadsheets. We knew the numbers were wrong
Yeah.
the moment we put them in the system, but we thought, it's the best we can do. It's better than nothing. And so I had always been a curious person, always loved the research part of any project. And
Mm.
so when I discovered Foresight, I was again like, where has this been? And just really fell in love with the field, the process, and then sort of the entrepreneurial spark that I didn't even know I had in me in establishing this department. And so, yeah, was it long after that I jumped ship and joined Mr. Spencer at his firm in a partnership
Which was
role.
Kedge. It
And
was Kedge then, wasn't it, Frank?
yeah, that's still our
Yeah.
parent company, Kedge, but we ran into some trademark and IP concerns with other organizations with a similar name or the same name. So we keep that as our parent company name, and we've been known as the Future School. But we do more than just the learning aspect, and we thought that TFSX, which incorporates the Future School as an acronym, and the X is an homage to Kedge and the anchor that we talk about, really helping us reach our desired futures. That was the name where we landed. It was a great URL that was still available, to be honest. And
Yeah.
so that's where we landed. So yeah, that's I think it's similar to a lot of folks in that when we introduce people to foresight, they do often have that perspective of like, how have I never heard of this?
I'm
This is
hearing that all the
amazing.
time. Yes. Yeah.
All the time, all the time. And so I love that. And so my job is the best job because every day, almost every day, I get to imprint on somebody new and give them this incredible discovery of unlocking this innate ability within themselves
Yeah.
and changing their lives, not just their professional lives, but their personal lives. It's going to change the lens by which they view everything, and I think change the world. So it's a pretty amazing job to get to do. Sometimes stressful and thankless, but we do it anyway. So
Well, I think we earn the karma is a one sort of payback. You put out there
true.
good stuff, it sort of comes back in one way or another, doesn't it?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And in this time of where we find ourselves, especially in the US, but worldwide, you know,
Mm.
I think this role and the role of a futurist, there's n- there are important roles across, but again, what a privilege it is to
Yep.
have the role of a futurist and a futurist that's imparting this knowledge and support because this is the lifeline that
Yep.
people need to not just weather this storm, but to actually imagine what is really possible and to inspire new thinking, so that when we do see our systems collapse, as we're seeing, we emerge, in a transformational way and
Yep.
not backward. So it's a very important time to be a futurist and to have this foresight capability, and that's what we talk about in our firm every day.
No, that's absolutely it's a wonderful, but it's also an evolutionary account. We are all evolving, and that was what I picked up in Frank's most recent post. Is he's talking about this evolutionary capability. So your life maps what you're actually doing, and I think as futurists, our lives do tend to be kind of reflective of all that inner work that goes along with the whatever it is that we and wherever we end up. So, Frank, how did you get here? What's your story?
Well, Marcus already knows, but it's I have a very different story from Yvette. So
It doesn't involve Mickey Mouse at all.
that will eventually.
And does it? What about spreadsheets, Frank? What's your relationship
Yeah, no,
with
Frank,
spreadsheets?
Frank is not going to tell you about
I will
spreadsheets.
never tell you about a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. They'll never appear. Um, Very, very different story,
Yeah.
and it's a story that I don't tell very often. But because I'm sitting here with the beautiful and wonderful Marcus Bussey and Yvette, what a great combo.
Yeah, this is a
Yes,
good
this is very
combination for
fun.
sure.
Um, I'll tell it. And that is the fact that when I was first introduced to Futures and Foresight, I was pastoring. I was a vicar. I was a pastor.
Were you
Um,
really? Okay.
yes, I was for 15 years. And near the end of that journey, um, I had always been that, this is supposed to be something as a Christian minister, this is something that should be applied to our social context, our everyday life. We were never, we got to fly away and we don't care about what happens here. So more of a social Christian aspect, although I think it ran the gamut. I knew every denomination and I went to all the prayer breakfasts and all this good stuff. But
Okay.
somewhere along that journey, near closer to the end, because I was leaning into that aspect, and I just started talking about like, what does it mean for us to like build a world, on the kingdom of God and all of this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I ended up meeting Dr. Jay Gary.
Oh yes, yeah, I know Jay. Yeah,
who, of course, was doing a lot of work around the year 2000 with Christian organizations in Colorado and California and different
yeah,
places, and at the time was establishing a little bit later, a few years later, was establishing a master's degree in foresight at Regent University.
yeah.
And so we reconnected, and I ended up being mentored by him for years. And Jay is quite the character. He's a beautiful, wonderful person.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think there's a lot. There's half of the people that know him from sort of this religious futurist association, and the other half know him as a very irreligious um, and just powerful leader. Of course, he was the president of the APF for a long
Yeah.
time after Cindy Fruin was, and so that was sort of my segue into the field, was from, a social, religious, we care, love, empathy dynamic, which still follows
Yeah.
me to this
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
But I don't really, I don't practice Christianity in a formal way, religion in a formal way anymore. And then it was actually Dr. Gary who said, like, why don't you, I had been to the World Future Society several times, but he said, hey, this year, I want you to come. It's in Vancouver, and I want you to lead a workshop with me, and we're going to tell people how to do this stuff, So I was like, great. So I went and we did a boot camp the day before, and Yvette was one of the practitioners that came to the boot camp. And the
Nice.
boot camp was the day before the conference officially starts. If anybody ever remembers going to the WFS, the boot camps were always before. So I went to the boot camp and literally skipped the rest of the conference because Yvette and I walked around the city of Vancouver just talking about what we could do at the Walt Disney Company. And she ended up hiring me and bringing me in, and then left. And then for the next 5 years, we built the largest futures team in the world across 46 countries. It took 5 years of building and working and building that as a competency and a capacity within that organization. Of
Within
course,
Disney
that's
International, yeah.
Walt Disney International. And I mean, in Japan and Korea and across Europe and across Africa and across the Middle East and everywhere.
Frank was the first futurist that I remember working with or talking to that talked about foresight as a leadership competency. At the time, that's how he referred to it. Now we continue to evolve our messaging and our understanding and the way we position our work. Now we talk about it as an evolutionary trait and how it's something that you can unlock. It's still a leadership competency as well when we're thinking about an organizational context. But it was so refreshing, to hear him say, yeah, everyone should be doing this. Everybody should be thinking this way. And we can help, develop that skill, that capability, and that mindset.
And Marcus, too, it was something that just came to me, and I know that you probably want us to move on, but
No, I'm easy.
clearly Yvette and I come from very different backgrounds. And you can see how much I rely on her, business expertise and insight and knowledge. And yet, she's like, she also was sort of the odd person out, even in her organizations, because I think she's more creative and she's more dynamic. And they were all, spreadsheets. And Yvette can take you around a spreadsheet, believe me. But it's like,
Yeah, I'm sure.
but she's like, I think a part of her thing is like, I got to move to the next thing and the next thing, because she's a creative as well. And I am just the polar opposite in terms of business knowledge and all of that. I'm my whole life I've been thinking about like, where's consciousness and all of this good stuff. So, but what I wanted to say out of that is because I think a lot of your students will be watching some of these interviews, and maybe other people will as well. And you can sort of see how we came from very different backgrounds, but we got to the same place in a manner of speaking, and we play off each other with this dynamic that is just, people and comment all the time and say, like, how did you guys learn to facilitate together and all? And I think it's because of the differences in our background and how we need each other so much in the way that we present and what we do. So,
Yep. No, I hear you, and I think that's a really important dimension of our humanness, is that we inter-are. There's no Frank separate from Yvette.
That's right. That's
vice versa. And of course, even me, we're on the other side of the planet, but we constantly sort of interacting in different ways. So, and that's part of my future's message, is that we co-create, that we inter-are in a sense.
You're speaking our language here.
So it's beautiful, and I really relate to it. And just want to touch back on this leadership concept. So, in my thinking, leaders are people who have some relationship to foresight. They actually have some, but a lot of time leaders are mistaken, or managerialists are mistaken for leaders. And I think what you're touching on in your description of that context is that there's managerialism, which is always business as usual, and leaders, a good leader is actually, 5, 10, 15 years ahead in some way at least. And of course, we would want it to be a century ahead, but we don't want to push our luck, right?
At this point, we're just hoping we're not looking backwards.
Yeah.
It's small wins, Marcus, small wins.
Remember who you're speaking to. Remember who
But
you're speaking to.
if we jumped in a century from now and we were to write the history of this point of time,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be very, very interesting, because I'm a historian as well. So,
Yes.
my history brain is looking at what's happening in the US, but also all over the planet. And we're seeing systems breakdowns, ruptures, that total, the dream we've lived, especially at our age. I don't know how old you are, Yvette, but Frank, you're a few years younger than me, but we come through that period of, this is just great, we can just keep driving our cars down the highway and it's all going to be fine. But it's not that way anymore.
That's right.
So what's something that you're doing right now, Yvette, that is really exciting for you?
We're always up to something. We
I'm
joke
sure.
that we work with a lot of organizations like Disney, large organizations, and obviously I worked directly for Disney for a number of years. And one of the things that was most refreshing about joining Frank on this entrepreneurial journey is that we joke that we can make a strategic decision from the point we get off of the gate of an airplane to riding the tram to pick up our luggage. In that span of a few
The
minutes,
company might have changed.
we've created a new
Really?
product, a new service, or a complete, and it doesn't, it doesn't require a ton of approvals. And so we're very nimble. I think, we're really excited because we try to position our offerings. We've been talking about it as the foresight stool, because we understand that there's not sort of a levels per se, but that foresight can meet you in different stages of your life or different needs or different gaps. And so, I think where we started a lot of our work is in that future ready space where, we're helping people develop the skills, be introduced to foresight, get certified, all of those great things if that's part of their goals. And then in the future empowered space, which is another leg of the stool, we're talking about our relationship with complexity and the mindsets and behaviors that are needed in this environment to be successful and to be good stewards of the future.
To call on the higher order dimensions, purposes, transformative realities, which we strongly believe that businesses really need today. I think at the top, you mentioned, Marcus, that futures get sort of just lumped in with insights and trend analysis and those kinds of things, and it might flatline on that to some degree. But our hope is that businesses see more and more that transformation is not a scary word if they lean into it. Organizational transformation rather than organizational development should be, sort of the norm, especially in the environment we're in. And so we hope there's more of that. And then there's that third leg.
That third leg, which is future consciousness or futures conscious. And again, this is where I think I know Frank loves to spend his bandwidth on. This is where we talk about holoptic foresight dynamics, the many-eyed whole, and really thinking about the philosophy of futures thinking and the fact that we have the ability to co-create and understand what's emerging, very much like the dragonfly's eye, and the dragonflies become the
I
symbol
love that
of
metaphor.
that
I love
experience.
that
Yeah.
metaphor.
Yeah. So, we have that full spectrum, or that many, that multiple leg stool. And so it makes it exciting because one day we'll be teaching, how to identify trends, or, create scenarios. Another moment, like we did earlier today, we're hosting a live stream and talking about how to be a futurist activist, because we believe that practicing foresight is an act of activism. And then we'll be talking about consciousness the next moment. So, we I love that about our practice, is that we have that dynamism, whatever that word is, and we can be dynamic, and folks move throughout our ecosystem
Yeah.
fluidly. So this year we really are investing more in our online platform, my TFSX,
Yep.
my.tfsx. And so we've had it for a couple of years. We've used it primarily as a learning management system to house our pre-work and our certification assessments. But we're really leaning into the community element. Frank's launched a community of practice around holoptic foresight dynamics that folks can participate in. And so we're excited about that. And then we're really excited about a new program we're going to be launching next month called Host, the Host program, which will allow and empower individuals to host 30-day challenges in their networks and communities. There'll be an opportunity for them to establish themselves further as foresight practitioners and earn revenue. And it's a licensing opportunity. So that'll be on the platform as well. So, again, we're always trying to think about how do we further our mission, which is to democratize the field, to make it accessible for more people.
I just have to quickly that it's like everything that Yvette just mentioned came from the mind of Yvette, or probably
no, that's not true.
Nicole.
So
because she's the builder, obviously.
I
didn't work in the Walt
I am
Disney Company.
so sorry. Pause right now. So Frank does this every once in a while. So let me just level set. So all of the frameworks. So we have the Natural Foresight Framework, which is our framework. It's open source, but it's a framework that we developed. Frank created that. Frank created the tools that we use. Frank creates the scenarios that we use with our clients, or co-creates them with them. He is the developer and the person that has curated the idea of holoptic foresight dynamics. And so it is a really great partnership in that I can help operationalize his vision. I'm a student of foresight, and
So am I.
and I think we all are, right? And I think if you approach it that way, there's never a boring day. Like, I mean, there's some days, I'm going to be honest, that I'm like, really, Frank, another model, another thing to just expand my brain. But then I'm thankful, because how boring would it be if we were still doing the same thing 10 years
I
later?
like connecting with my Australian futurist friends who are very integral, evolutionary, and holoptic in their views, because when they contact me, it's either very early in the morning or very late at night, and you don't ever know anything about it.
I don't know
So
it. Yeah.
I can hide it
I'm
from
out.
you.
I'm out.
Yeah.
But Frank does after dark.
Yes, you don't seem to sleep, Frank, but
It is weird, right? It is weird.
Probably
Yeah.
not a good
the
thing.
Not a good
energy that you guys have. And so you mentioned Nicole. So you've got a team behind you, yes?
Yes. And so that team
Tell me about
flexes
that.
and flows, but Nicole Baker Rosa has been a part of our organization.
She was employee number one.
Yes. And she went away for a bit. What do we call it? Hashtag sabbatical. But during that time, she worked for the largest university here in Florida, and in their credentialing arm. And so Nicole was really the brainchild behind our professional certification. She's the one that led that effort, establishing the Global Foresight Advisory Council and piloting that multi-level certification, professional certification in natural foresight in with our partners in Dubai. So she's talk about energy. Like, everybody else has 24 hours in the day, but Nicole somehow has 36. I'm convinced. And and so then we have projects and partners, and I think the host program is a great example of where we bring in our alumni and the community members to support projects and to work alongside us. So it's kind of a sweet sort of system that we have, where we train people, and then later on we're like, hey, you want to come work on this project?
That's right. Yeah.
It's really great. It helps us stay nimble and small, and weather any kind of downturns, and still give back to the overall community.
That's beautiful. Well, yeah, I'm just got my eye on the clock here. I was thinking, well, it would be really lovely to hear, I think, about the work that you're doing with nature. You take people out into what we would say the bush in Australia. You take them out into the forest, wherever it is,
Yeah.
and you put them through the ropes, I suspect, at some level, all these little city slickers going into the, out somewhere. I can imagine that, oh, that's a bug or that's a spider, or I don't know how it works. But can you
Is he
just,
watching me while we're out here? Because he's describing exactly how I react on these little pilgrimages that Frank
okay.
leads us on.
Yeah, no, I've seen that many times. So it'd be a really nice way to wrap this short
Yeah.
conversation up with a story from both of you or one of you. I'll hand
No,
it over to
this
you.
is all you,
No,
Frank.
I think it's both of us,
No,
but
no, no.
I'm gonna expect to
I'll talk
jump
about the
in.
spiders later.
But we began in 2022 at the height of the pandemic, um, to host uh, retreats. We had not ever done a retreat before. For many, many years, we had been hosting training programs that really were centered more on the natural foresight framework and foresight learning and journeys in general. But we decided that the retreat and the atmosphere that brought about and the whole nine yards was the perfect time for us to say we need to bring the philosophy that runs in the background of what we do, that clients and students and other people don't really hear specifically. But if they hung around us long enough, they might go like, huh, there's some kind of stew in the background that's different about all of you. And so we decided that needed to be brought front and center. It needed its own place. And so we launched what we call the Transformations of Natural Foresight Retreats. And that's a place where we bring people together for 3 days and we say, let's talk about halactic foresight dynamics, which, by the way, there's plenty of articles on HFD, what we call HFD, but it's basically sort of a catch-all for the idea that there is a cooperative evolutionary trait, only cooperative, that its superpower is to foster the perception of what wants to emerge rather than looking at trends that are already on the surface. It's like, as Norris Bateson says, it's what's underneath the ground, what wants to emerge, that is human plus kin plus planet plus cosmos,
Yeah,
is loaded with more potentiality and possibility than what we have on the surface, which
yeah,
often comes out of the dominant narrative anyway.
mm,
And so that superpower of being able to cooperatively in an evolutionarily empowered kind of way,
yeah,
um, uh, cultivates that perception of emerging novelty. And that's what fosters the co-creation of transformational realities. So we spend so much of our wheels today saying, like, how can we possibly transform? And it's like Einstein said, it's like you cannot build a solution to a problem with the same level of consciousness that created the problem.
yeah.
So we take people out in nature and we spend 3 days. We do foresight yoga, which, if
Oh.
you've never done foresight yoga before,
I've got to
Okay.
show up for that at
you
some
got to
point.
Yeah.
come. You got to come. And actually, Marcus, I know you know this, at our last retreat, which was just a couple of months ago. All the time speeding by quickly, but it
Yeah.
was
Last year. Yeah.
yeah, last year. Um, we did the dragonflies palimpsest. And
Ah,
I asked your
That was great.
permission. I asked
beautiful,
your permission to
beautiful.
use that, and but we tagged it as the Dragonflies palimpsest, the HFD palimpsest,
Yeah,
and we did exactly what we had done at the other retreats, and that is we take people forest bathing,
yeah,
because again, if it's a cooperative evolutionary trait, and the cooperation is not just human, it's kin plus planet,
yeah.
then we have to say that our anticipation, our imaginal anticipation, is coming from what we might call nature. I think is a word that often separates humans from the rest of the
Yes,
cosmos.
it's a
Carol Sanford would say
misguided
nature
term,
is
but
a
I know
made-up
what you mean.
word. But to reconnect ourselves back
Yeah,
to kin and cosmos again, and that's where we start to get the sense in that cooperative evolutionary element, a trait that allows us to say, together we can perceive what wants to emerge, instead of saying individually on a stage, I will give you the top 10 trends.
yeah,
That's a very different kind of foresight, honestly.
yes,
And we believe that's a philosophy that's very different from the philosophy that we all hold today, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously. Most futurists today, myself included, all of us, because we're born into this.
Mm.
We get excited about the tools and the methodologies and all of this stuff, and we don't realize that in the background is a cosmology, is a philosophy that's flowing, that's driving, even if our practice is something very different from what a lot of people do. We're talking about trends and years out and these things. We still are coming from a place of a modernity and coloniality and non-evolutionary kind. We just don't realize it, and so it bleeds out in your message whether you know it does or not. It does for me.
Yeah.
So if we change our philosophy to be this dragonflies philosophy, which sort of houses philosophies from things that different people have already said as well. It's not unique, and yet put together it's something really powerful. This like foresight actually can be a biological, psychological, social, and sacred dynamic of all living things. And so yeah, we're out in nature, and people are taking this. Some people take their shoes off. I'm like, really, on the forest bed? I don't know that I would want to do that, but spider webs are in the
I
way
think
and all.
what's
But
cool too is
yeah,
we have CEOs and
oh
CFOs and
Yeah.
people that traditionally work at a bank or and as well as change agents
Yeah.
and philanthropists and in the forest we're all the same, we're all sort of dressed in the same clothing and it's a way to take away the PowerPoint slides, take away all the traditional conventions as we talk about the future and really commune with one another. And we watch a film, we talk about how the film influences our way of thinking about the future. And so
we gather the first night around
there's lots of great food.
people don't know. Oh, it's a food haven. But it's like the first night we get around a fire pit at night, and there's
Yeah.
fires every night. But the first night's really special because we do ancestral futuring on the first night, and everybody actually brings an object with them from wherever they're traveling. They're like, "This is my great 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 grandmother's waffle iron," or whatever. And it really brings back memories for me. And the tears are flowing, and we're like reconnecting because over those 3 days we want to talk about the dreams that were buried, the ancestors yet to come, and that we are ancestors to both directions. And when they start to really sense that, again, it's cooperation. It's not just human kin and planet and cosmos. It's also those who have come before and those who are yet to come. So we're cooperating across time, space, and experience. And I think you can hear how my demeanor has changed when we start talking about this part. I get more and more jazzed,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah. You can feel
because
the
I really
energy.
believe this philosophy bleeds forward. So for instance, we just finished last week with one of the North America's largest clothing
Athleisure.
athleisure developers, and so that's like, what has that got to do with forest bathing? Although I think these guys are a little yoga based kind of, so they
They
might
would.
be into
They
it.
would.
But again, they're just trying to sell clothes.
Yeah.
And so you would think, well, you just go there. That's a very different thing. But no, see, because our philosophy bleeds into it. And so I could tell you specific points that they might not have known, but I knew that cooperative evolutionary trait that helps us to perceive an emerging novelty that co-creates transformational realities was bleeding over into that work. And they might not have known it, but that
Yeah.
was the philosophy we were feeding to them the entire 2 days.
Ultimately, we don't want to help people create a future that looks like today. We don't know that that's a really good use of anybody's time. And so when we go into any engagement, it's with really wanting to create transformation and create better futures for all, no matter what the engagement is. So
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
That's a really powerful statement at the end there. That we don't want to replicate business as usual. We want transformative, whatever that might be. And one of the things is we don't know. And to be comfortable with not knowing. I think, and that's where that creativity that you both talked about in your own style comes from. That this creativity is what? It's generous, isn't it? Creativity shares. It's not, that's not IP. That's just
That's
something
right.
I'm going to throw out and use.
That's right.
that's right.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. So last words. Let's say, so Yvette first. We'll give you the mic. What would you say to the people who are starting their futures journey here in Australia? Actually, they're all over the world, the people in this course. So they're not just Australia. Yeah.
Welcome. We need you. You're going to face challenging conversations being a foresight professional, practicing foresight, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
in your title or just in the background, takes courage. And toppling the status quo and the dominant narratives and the dominant systems takes courage, but you're in the right place and you're doing the right thing and you're on the right side of history and of the future. Lean into your learnings, the tools, the methods, and your intuition. Because I think, and one another, I think that's the other piece is that, this is not a solo endeavor, it's a team sport. And, personally, if I can ever help any of you, please, don't hesitate to reach out.
Wow. Hard act to follow, Frank. What are you going to say?
Yeah, what in the world? How do you follow
It
that?
was good because I was
I
first.
follow her around every day there. So. Yeah, I would lean into what I said at the end. It's like for all of you that are getting into foresight or you're new to the field, of course, what's on the surface is so tangible and so it's the bright shiny object, and it's important to learn tools and methodologies. Obviously, you're not going to ignore that. You're going to lean into that. When you go to do client work or whatever that might translate into, you're going to be using tools. But I would say check your philosophy. And it's something that in business where we hear so much of like, oh, that's not tangible enough. And it's like, it's the most tangible thing that you possibly can have, because what's running unconsciously in the background of why you're doing what you're doing results in what you will do. And you'll see as time goes on that might be very different from one futures practitioner to another, because some are saying like, AI, 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 and AI is a real thing today, but where did it come from? And can we question those kinds of things? And so I really think that it's important that we understand that, as Dougal Hines says, when a world is coming to an end, when its story doesn't have any chapters left to write, and when its future doesn't have any runway left to run.
Yeah.
And we have come to the end of a world. And so we're going to have to change our philosophies.
Yeah.
And so, being in the hands of Marcus Bussey is a great place to start changing your philosophy and running something in the background for foresight that has much more potential than to just be a toolified way to look at the next 5 years and sort of make a strategic plan, but to really change the world biologically, psychologically, with care, empathy, and love. And I think that's the goal.
Nice job.
Thank you. A good wrap up. I want to thank you both so much. I know it's getting late there, and I'll be tapping you on the shoulder again. I think we should do more of these. And I'm always happy, of course, to play into your world if you ever want some eccentric old fellow from.
Well, you always are. That post you mentioned today, of course, was that's been a year and a half now ago or something like that, but that we did
Foresight
with
at the end of the
Sarah
world.
Owen, your friend Sarah Owen, and and Foresight at the End of the World, and you were one of the panelists. And
was that a year and a half ago? My God,
isn't that crazy?
A year and a half ago.
I know.
Okay. Anyway, I will sign off here with you, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Marcus. It was a pleasure.